Hi, welcome back. I'm Soudy Khan, Director of User Experience at Neuron. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the need for critical thinking in user experience. It's something that I don't think we do enough of, and often we're so busy producing, we don't take the time to look at counterpoints. But I'm going to start with a few questions. The first one would be, if I made the statement, if it needs an instruction manual, it's probably not a good user experience. What do you think of that? Well, what if it was a 747? Does that not need an instruction manual for the pilot? Do they not need training? So maybe the idea there is that when things go wrong, they have the right information, they have that mission critical information, and maybe we can reduce the training time or the load on the pilot. But be careful of blanket statements like, if it needs an instruction manual, it's not a good user experience. Another one I would say that I hear quite a bit is, well, without data, you're just another opinion. Well, what if it's the opinion of, say, Steven Spielberg or J.J. Abrams, and you've written a screenplay, and they tell you it's just not very good? Well, maybe we can't quantify what makes their opinion good, but it's the billions of neurons in their brains, the decades of experience that sort of create what we could only call taste. And so, that's another thing. So it might not be something that we can easily find that in terms of someone's opinion and qualify that or quantify that using data. But we know that certain people, based on their experience, really do have data. They've got a lot of data points in their mind. It's just not something we can see. So again, that's another opinion or another statement I would be cautious of. The last one of the things I heard is wireframing is dead. Someone again just trying to make a statement. But even if you're creating a very, very simple website and across the top it says something like about us, services, pricing, testimonials, contact, you are actually wireframing. You're just doing it in your head. Before you start to code that or before you start to apply visuals to that, you are actually wireframing it in your head. But I would argue that if you're, say, the information architect working with the senior UI designer and you're creating, say, a competitor for eBay or Amazon, to say that wireframing is dead would be really, really wrong. I don't think anyone could actually keep that amount of information in their brain. And more importantly, it'd be almost impossible to communicate with the dozens of other people that would need to see those wireframes. So with standards, familiar conventions, and available UI palettes, creating simple interfaces and applications is something that's relatively easy to do. But when you deal with mission critical or new user experiences, I want you to think really critically. I'm going to give you a couple other examples, not so much blanket statements or things that I think are just generalizations, but something that when you think critically, you look at the counterpoint, you might think is not actually right. One of the things that's well understood is discoverability as a metric. So we look at that as a metric if the user is able to discover something. If it's not easily discoverable, often we say, well, it's just not worth it. But in the case, for example, of Apple's pinch and zoom circa 2006 on the first iPhone, that was not discoverable. In fact, it was very non-obvious. It was patented. But there was a cost-benefit analysis. That was done, and it said the cost of educating the user is worth it because the benefit to being able to pinch and zoom and view regular websites on a mobile device is an outstanding benefit. So the cost-benefit analysis was done. Another thing is number of button clicks. That's something that people look at, and sometimes it makes sense. I mean, maybe if you're looking at a server in a restaurant and they really, really need to enter a lot of information constantly, the number of button clicks might make sense. But at the same time, what about video games? A user there might be pressing the buttons 3,600 times an hour, but there's little work involved. So we have to think more critically and look at not just the number of buttons pressed, but the amount of work. For example, I can say you're just one button press away from having the answer or finishing the task. But if the question is a multiple choice question and the question is, what's the square root of 256,924.8? Well, there's a lot of work in that one click away from finishing the task. So in summary, I would say think critically about things. Take your time. to understand the context of the user, who the user is. Sometimes, again, you have a captive audience and you might want to take the time to teach them a specific UI that may not be so obvious in the beginning, but once learned, it's very optimized for a specific task. And we see that in the medical space, the military space. Question things, especially blanket statements, even if you hear them coming from me or anyone else. Things like wireframing is dead, or these sort of blanket statements, often just used to sort of create an emotional response. And then seek out counterpoints. That's the last thing. And debate them with your team. Thanks a lot for watching. Take care.